Muhammad is allowed to break his oath. Go ahead and break your oath. The historical background is Muhammad, it was understood that Muhammad can have sex with his slave girls. That was understood. Muhammad's wives didn't want it happening in their beds, right? You go somewhere else. You go somewhere else and have sex with your slave girl. Anyway, Muhammad's wife, Hafsa, goes out to run some errands. He takes his slave girl, Mary the Copt, Christian girl. Muhammad takes his slave girl, Mary the Copt, into Hafsa's bed, starts having sex with Mary the Copt in Hafsa's bed. Hafsa comes home early, catches Muhammad in bed with in her bed, in Hafsa's bed with his slave girl. She flips out. What are you doing? Muhammad's just going, don't tell the other wives, don't tell Aisha, they're all gonna complain to me. She goes, tells everyone, right? She goes, tells all the wives around her, you're doing this in our beds? You're having sex with, just rolling around with your slave girl, getting your fluids all over, her fluids, your fluids all over our beds is disgusting, right? So Muhammad, in order to calm all his wives down, says, I swear by Allah, I will never have sex with that slave girl again. And that calms his wives down. Okay, he's saying he's never going to do it again.
Okay.
Then he goes back to having sex with her. He says, it's Allah gave me a revelation saying I could break that oath.
Quran.
Yeah, so Surah 6, you don't understand it from Surah 66 verses 1 to 2. It just says Muhammad can break his oath because Allah didn't command him to make that oath. Allah says, I didn't command you to make that oath there. But think about this. Think about the reasoning. Muhammad, I didn't order you to make that oath, so you can go ahead and break it. Allah. So Muhammad receives these revelations. He delivers the revelations to his followers. He bows down in honor of the revelation, saying we can all now pray to pagan goddesses. His followers bow down, and then his entire tribe bows down too. Wow, he's praised our goddesses. And so you have this, everyone's good and everyone's on the same page.
Right.
Except now he's a polytheist, right?
Yeah.
So Muhammad comes back a little later and says, Gabriel informed me that revelation didn't come from Allah. That revelation came from Satan. Satan tricked me into receiving that revelation. Which opens, so many different cans of worms. One, wait, Muhammad couldn't tell the difference between a revelation from God and a revelation from Satan? I don't trust anything you say now. If you can't tell the difference between God and Satan when you're receiving a revelation, and Satan can actually deliver revelations to you, you got problems. I'm not trusting anything. Okay, this is either what I am, or there's someone out there who can help with this sort of thing. When you start thinking like that, I think you're about that close to becoming a Christian, because when you ask yourself, okay, who out of anyone else in history who had the ability to take screwed up, messed up people and do something with them, you basically get a list of one. It ain't Muhammad. It ain't Muhammad. You get a list of Jesus. That's it.
Think about this for a moment. Have you ever been so sure that God wasn't real, so confident that faith was just a crutch for weak minds, that you mocked anyone who believed? What happens when that certainty begins to crack? This is not a story that starts in church. It doesn't begin with prayer, worship music, or a soft altar call. It began in darkness. Inside the mind of an atheist who believed morality was an illusion, love was chemical, and life had no ultimate meaning. This is a journey marked by rage, emptiness, and a cold absence of empathy. A journey through violence, prison bars, and a mind at war with itself. A man who felt nothing when others wept. Nothing when lives were destroyed. Nothing even when his own soul was spiraling. But here's where the story turns. Because even in a prison cell, behind steel doors and concrete walls, truth has a way of finding you. Not through force, not through fear, but through relentless questions that refuse to stay buried. Questions about guilt, evil, meaning, and ultimately, about Jesus Christ. Sit back, because you're about to hear a story of deep resistance, crushing mental struggle, and an unexpected encounter with the grace of Jesus. This is not a fairy tale conversion, but a hard, painful, honest journey from disbelief to belief. If you've ever wrestled with doubt, if you've ever wondered whether God could reach someone like you, stay till the end. Because this story proves that no heart is too hardened, no mind too closed, and no past too broken for the transforming power of the gospel.
When Muhammad found out that the Jews and Christians weren't confirming his scriptures and so on, and were denying him, then it's, they're actually evil. They're actually evil. They know I'm in their books and they're denying it. And that's why I have to subjugate them all. And so what you'd have to say is, hey, once Muslims are acknowledging our scriptures and that we have differences, then Christians, you can acknowledge, hey, we're fine with your scriptures as long as you're acknowledging our scriptures, and then you don't have to subjugate us, and we'll all just compete to see who can do the best works or something like that. Again, I don't think I don't think this fits together very well because I don't believe in Muhammad, and I don't believe this is actually from God.
Wow.
I've said this repeatedly when people are asking me about what I think is the best position. It's if I say, and I would say something like, okay, if for some reason, God forbid, Muslims were to give me some great argument for why Muhammad is a prophet and the Quran is the word of God. If I somehow became convinced of that and I thought, the Quran is the word of God, Muhammad was a true prophet, I couldn't suddenly ignore what I know the Quran says about the previous scriptures. I couldn't do that. So what would I do? What would I have to do as a Muslim? Well, I'd have to do what I just said. I'm not just going to reinterpret everything Allah says that I don't like. I can't do it. I can't say, well, you've got dozens and dozens of verses affirming the scriptures, but I'm going to say they're all corrupted and Allah means something different. I would have more respect for Allah than that, right? So I can't do that. And I'm not going to say, well, there's this phantom book that Allah affirmed that appeared and disappeared and stuff like that. I can't say that. That's just beyond ridiculous. I actually had to say it to John Fontaine. So wait a minute. So if the Torah, if the Injil made it to 7th century Arabia, then the Injil existed in the 1st century, the 2nd century, the 3rd century, the 4th century, the 5th century, the 6th century, the 7th century, all the way down into some weird little city in Arabia without a single mention of it anywhere. Don't you think a book from Jesus would kind of been important to Christians that we would have been talking about it? He was fine. He was fine with there being no mention of this anywhere. And then the Torah, of course, the Torah is even worse because now you've got it for like 2,000 years and it's appearing and disappearing and being re-revealed whenever his source says that it existed during this time. Okay, it was re-revealed during that time, then it was lost again. So it exists, then it doesn't exist, then it exists, then it doesn't exist, and then in 7th century Medina, it exists again. So anyway, the point is I can never acknowledge that. And so if for some reason I concluded that the Quran is the word of God, I'd have to say, okay, the Quran is the word of God, but it's also affirming these scriptures as the word of God. And therefore the only thing I can do is harmonize. And when I can't harmonize, I have to say Allah has a reason for making these not harmonize. And it must be, the only explanation I can think of is 548 for why these wouldn't be able to be harmonized. And so I'd have to believe something along those lines, which it's hard, but it fits better than everything else.
Yeah.
I think you could make a case for several of those, except prophet, except true prophet. I think you can make a good case for liar. Not with everything, because I apply the same standard to everyone. When Muslims say Paul was a liar, it's like Paul was willing to endure torture and eventually death for what he's proclaiming. Same with, a bunch of the apostles and so on. So I have to take them seriously that they weren't lying. Liars generally make poor martyrs. So when Muhammad's out, when he's being persecuted or risking death in battle and stuff like that, it's like he seems to believe that he's a prophet. And so I can't just say he's lying the entire time. There are certain instances, because you have a bunch of them, where Muhammad receives revelations that seem to have no purpose other than giving him something that he wants.
Like?
So I mentioned Muhammad and Aisha. Mm-hmm. So Muhammad married this girl when she's 6, and it's based on a revelation, right? So he said he had a dream about Allah giving this 6-year-old girl to him as a gift, right? So maybe he did, right? If I had a dream about a 6-year-old girl, I want to go see a psychiatrist. I wouldn't think, I guess she's mine, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. So maybe you think, okay, maybe he did have a dream about her and he took it as a revelation. When Muhammad took the wife of his own adopted son. So Muhammad originally had an adopted son named Zayd. And Zayd married one of the most beautiful women there were, Zainab. And then Muhammad goes to visit his adopted son one day and sees Zainab almost naked. She was wearing basically like a nightie. Mm-hmm. And then he walks away praising Allah because he concluded that since he desired her, Allah was revealing that she's going to be his. So Zayd divorces her so that Muhammad could have her, right? So Muhammad has an adopted son. Adopted son has a beautiful wife. Muhammad sees her almost naked, gets attracted to her, concludes that she's for him. His adopted son divorces her specifically so that Muhammad could have her. But then Muhammad gives the reason from Allah, because everyone starts saying, you can't take the wife of your own adopted son. They regarded that as the same as incest, basically back then. So they regard that as like incest. Then Allah has to explain why he told Muhammad to do that. It's not me. Allah ordered me to take that woman.
I didn't even want to.
Yeah. I had to have her. because of Allah. And Allah explains it. Anyone who wants to read it? Surah 33, verse 37 of the Quran. I kid you not, Allah says, the reason I needed you, Muhammad, to marry the wife of your own adopted son is because other people are wondering if they can marry the wives of their adopted sons, and I need them to know it's okay.
Okay.
Now, how many people do you know of, ever, in history, who really struggled? Can I take the wife of my own adopted son or not? I don't know. I need an explanation from God.
Yeah.
So that's just silly for multiple reasons. So now suppose it was Allah looks around and says, wow, there's all these guys wondering if they can take the wives of their own adopted sons out there. What am I going to do? I know, I'll have Muhammad marry the wife of his own adopted son, and then they'll know. Well, couldn't you have just revealed that? Like in the Quran, just said, okay, in case anyone's wondering whether you can take the wife of your own adopted son, yes, you can. Why do you need Muhammad to do it? You don't need Muhammad to do everything that you're saying is okay. You can just say it in the Quran. So you didn't need that. That's the point. One, it's an absurd. I've never heard of anyone wrestling with that. Two, even if there were, Muhammad wouldn't need to do it. Allah could just reveal it. But three, there's a worse problem. Also in Surah 33, since people are accusing Muhammad of incest over this, verses 4 to 5 of Surah 33, Allah abolishes adoption.
Oh.
So think about this. Adoption is abolished in Islam. You can take care of an orphan in Islam. You cannot adopt an orphan into your family. The orphan does not become part of your family. So wait a minute. He says, so think about, you getting it right?
Yeah, it's like time in, I can marry her. Time out, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, so,
time back. Yeah.
So that's the point. Allah is saying, Muhammad, you have to do this so that everyone understands it's okay. Oh, by the way, it's never a situation that's going to arise again because there's going to be no more adopted sons. It's like, okay, this is just completely idiotic at this point, right? Wow. Those are the sorts of things where it looks like Muhammad's just trying to justify every perverted desire that pops into his head. And there's plenty more. Like the Quran says, Muslims can marry up to 4 women. Muhammad had at least 9 wives at one time. Why? Allah gave him a special revelation, Surah 33, verse 50. Okay, you get more. Well, it sounds awfully convenient, right? That the one receiving the revelations is getting all these special privileges. I'll give you another one. Surah 66, verses 1 to 2. It just says that Muhammad is allowed to break his oath. Go ahead and break your oath. The historical background is Muhammad, it was understood that Muhammad can have sex with his slave girls. That was understood. Muhammad's wives didn't want it happening in their beds, right? You go somewhere else. You go somewhere else and have sex with your slave girl. Anyway, Muhammad's wife, Hafsa, goes out to run some errands. He takes his slave girl, Mary the Copt, Christian girl. Muhammad takes his slave girl, Mary the Copt, into Hafsa's bed, starts having sex with Mary the Copt in Hafsa's bed. Hafsa comes home early, catches Muhammad in bed with in her bed, in Hafsa's bed with his slave girl. She flips out. What are you doing? Muhammad's just going, don't tell the other wives. Don't tell Aisha. They're all gonna complain to me. She goes, tells everyone, right? She goes, tells all the wives around her. You're doing this in our beds? You're having sex with, just rolling around with your slave girl, getting your fluids all over, her fluids, your fluids all over our beds is disgusting, right? So Muhammad, in order to calm all his wives down, says, I swear by Allah, I will never have sex with that slave girl again. And that calms his wives down. Okay, he's saying he's never going to do it again.
Okay.
Then he goes back to having sex with her. He says, it's Allah gave me a revelation saying I could break that oath.
Where is this found?
This is Surah 66, verses 1 to 2.
I cannot believe that this is in the Quran.
Yeah, so
I
Surah
can
6,
believe it.
you don't understand it from Surah 66, verses 1 to 2. It just says Muhammad can break his oath because Allah didn't command him to make that oath. Allah says, I didn't command you to make that oath.
Don't put that on me.
Yeah, I didn't command you to make that oath. You can go to Tafsir Jalalain and you can go to Sunan an-Nasai, which give the historical background.
Whoa.
But, so you have right there, but think about this. Think about the reasoning. Muhammad, I didn't order you to make that oath, so you can go ahead and break
Let's
it.
pause for a moment. Because this part matters. Before the prison cell, the debates, and before Jesus ever became a serious question, there was an erratic mindset. Imagine growing up believing that life has no ultimate meaning, that right and wrong are just social agreements, that guilt is weakness, and empathy is optional. That was the world David Wood found himself in. The church wasn't sacred, it was boring. God wasn't offensive, he was perceived as irrelevant. And faith wasn't dangerous, it was laughable. And maybe you can relate. Maybe you've sat in a church service counting the minutes. Maybe you've looked at religious people and thought, you only believe this because you were raised in it. Maybe you've told yourself, I'm a free thinker. I don't need God to be moral. That's exactly where David was. But here's the thing nobody talks about. When you remove God, you don't remove judgment. You just turn it inward. And when there's no higher authority, you become the standard. And that sounds like freedom. Until it isn't. Because slowly, quietly, something starts to break. Not all at once, but piece by piece. You stop feeling what others feel. You stop caring the way others care, and you start watching pain from a distance, like it's happening to someone else. And inside there's this growing emptiness. Not loud, not dramatic, just cold. This is where the journey truly begins. Not with questions about Islam or Christianity, but with a deeper question. What happens to a human soul when it decides it answers to no one? And as you're about to see, ideas don't stay in your head forever. Eventually, they shape your choices. And those choices carry consequences. This is the road that led David to prison. And unexpectedly, the road that led him to Christ.
How many oaths that have ever been taken were actually commanded by God?
Few.
So all oaths can be, you can swear by Allah all day and all night. Allah didn't command me to say it, so I can go ahead and break that oath. It's like there's these weird issues. So anyway, that's what I'm talking about when I say some of this sounds way, way, way massively too convenient. Muhammad's getting all these revelations. So you can imagine this guy being a liar.
Yeah.
Like just making stuff up. I've got a religion now, I can say whatever I want. So that's the point. Some of it sounds like a guy who's just making up revelations to get whatever he wants and to dupe people. But there's other indications where he sounds like he really believes that he's a prophet. And you have reasons to think that he's really a prophet. So you could interpret that as he really thinks he's a prophet, but he feels comfortable making things up as well because he's so special and therefore he can, he knows he can get away with it. Or just his desires so massively influenced him that he would think he's receiving revelations saying that he could do these things. Point is, I don't know. So you have some indication, you have a bunch of indications that suggest he really believed he's a prophet. You have all these things where it's like this sounds like an obvious false prophet making things up to just give himself whatever he wants. The demonic stuff, like was he just possessed or something? Again, his first impression was that he was demon possessed. He was possessed by something and he became suicidal, tried to hurl himself off a cliff for this. So you could say sometimes your first impression is the correct one. So you could think he's actually demon possessed. And you have some other indications. You have what are called the satanic verses. That's when Muhammad, this was early on, but Muhammad was upset that his tribe didn't convert to Islam, and he was longing for a revelation that would convince his tribe to convert. Eventually, he got the revelation he was looking for. It said that Muslims can pray to three pagan goddesses, Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. They were the gods of his tribe, goddesses of his tribe. You can pray to Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. And the idea was they're not the main god, but they were called the exalted cranes, like in the bird sense. They were the exalted cranes. The idea was they'll carry your prayers up to Allah. So you can pray to them as intercessors, and they'll carry your prayers up to Allah. So Muhammad receives these revelations. He delivers the revelations to his followers. He bows down in honor of the revelation, saying we can all now pray to pagan goddesses. His followers bow down, and then his entire tribe bows down too. Wow, he's praised our goddesses. And so you have this, everyone's good and everyone's on the same page.
Right.
Except now he's a polytheist, right?
Yeah.
So Muhammad comes back a little later and says, Gabriel informed me that revelation didn't come from Allah. That revelation came from Satan. Satan tricked me into receiving that revelation. Which opens, so many different cans of worms. One, wait, Muhammad couldn't tell the difference between a revelation from God and a revelation from Satan? I don't trust anything you say now. If you can't tell the difference between God and Satan when you're receiving your revelation, and Satan can actually deliver revelations to you, you got problems. I'm not trusting anything you said. And by the way, a little side note, I mean, that leads to all kinds of other problems, like since the Quran affirms the Torah, and their Muslims' favorite passage from the Torah is Deuteronomy 18:18, which they view as a prophecy about Muhammad. God says that he's going to send a prophet like Moses. And they say, Muhammad's a prophet like Moses, so this must be him. Just 2 verses after that, Deuteronomy 18:20 says that it gives 2 criteria for spotting a false prophet. If someone delivers a revelation that doesn't come from God, or speaks in the names of other gods, that prophet shall die. It would have been a death sentence. So if Muhammad had delivered the satanic verses during the time of Moses would have had him executed for promoting polytheism and for delivering something that didn't actually come from God. So you have all those kinds of issues, but then Muhammad's response was, "Oops, the devil made me do it," and then he rejected that. And so, but anyway, that was part of the Quran. That was revealed as part of the Quran. Then they had to take that part out because it was from Satan. So you have that. There was a time for between 6 months and 2 years. Muslim sources aren't clear on how long it took, but between 6 months and 2 years, Muhammad was having delusional thoughts and false beliefs and was coming back and saying he did stuff. And people were like, "No, what are you talking about? You didn't do any of that." And then later on, he came back and said that someone had cast a magic spell on him that was giving him these delusional thoughts and false beliefs. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're a prophet and someone can take you out by getting a hair from your hairbrush and casting a spell? It's pretty wild. And then you just look at how he received his revelation. Let's talk about his face turning red. And he would start sweating profusely, even if it was cold and stuff like this. He would fall over on the ground and stuff. It sounds like something out of an Exorcist movie. So you've got all sorts of things you can point to as far as demonic influence. You have all sorts of things you can point to as far as him just coming up with stuff out of his own mind. And you've got the idea that he believed he was a prophet. No good evidence for that, but he's just deluded or insane. By the way, he's accused of that over and over again. Allah has to repeatedly respond. You're not a madman. You're not a madman. You're not. What prophet has to be told over and over again? You're not crazy. You're not crazy. You're not crazy. Because everyone around him was saying he's crazy. Anyway, so as far as the quadrilemma, you definitely have a case that Muhammad is just using religion to get what he wants. For some of the stuff, you have Muhammad was just insane. And again, you even have that from the Quran, but people were accusing him, you're nuts, man. Dude, you are nuts. And then, of course, that some of this had a demonic origin with, Muhammad thinking that and magic spell and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. The thing you don't really have is evidence that he's a true prophet. Because the evidence that he's a true prophet is that he's affirming our scriptures, which contradict what's going on there.
For those in the back, speaking of evidence, is there evidence to think that Muhammad was a pedophile?
Well, if you consider having sex with a prepubescent 9-year-old girl pedophilia, which would be straight out of the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of mental health problems. Having sex with being sexually attracted to a prepubescent girl would be,
and then engaging in that.
Yeah. And so what you do have distinctions there, because I read it. We actually went through it for a discussion. But yes, if you are sexually attracted to a prepubescent girl or boy, they would consider you to have a pedophilic disorder. But they have various distinctions because there are qualifiers like, are you just attracted to prepubescent girls or boys? And Muhammad wasn't. He would have sex with, other women and stuff. So they would call it non-exclusive pedophilic disorder. And there are other qualifiers, like some people are like attracted to just relatives. And so there's an incestuous variant of it and stuff like that. But yeah, you would say that Muhammad suffered from non-exclusive pedophilic disorder, according to
today's
what we would say
standards.
Today. And I was in prison when I first heard about that. And I heard because a Christian had read it in Voice of the Martyrs when it was talking about the problem with abuse of minors and minor marriage in various places. And they said that the reason they can't get around this in Islam or make a law against it is because Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl. And I was just thinking, you're crazy, man. There's no way Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl. I don't believe your magazine anymore. And it wasn't until I was having discussions with Nabil and I started looking this stuff up. It's all over the place. It's all over. There's like over 200 passages in their sources talking about Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl. And so I only started bringing that up, not to be mean, but it was because back then, and people don't realize what arguments have been so destroyed that they don't even hear them anymore. Back then, you're talking 2003, 2004, one of the most common arguments for Islam was Muhammad's character is so perfect in every single way that there's no other explanation other than he's a divine prophet. There's no other explanation. And so you start finding this stuff out and it's like, okay, what about him having sex with a 9-year-old girl? How's that not a problem? Back then you were just called a liar. Liar, that's not, okay, well here's the source. Oh yeah, but there are all these other sources. And so it was years of them lying. So first they just said it's not true. Christians are making this up. Then once you actually started showing them sources, then it was, okay, yes, there are some sources, but the sources are all over the place. In other passages it says she was much older. It got to the point where several years ago I was in a debate with a Muslim, and he was saying, oh yeah, so David's quoted, and I quoted like 24 passages in my opening statement about Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl. This guy was saying, no, it never happened. She was much older. And he was going, so you have those passages, but you have all these other passages. And I just start going, give me one. Give me one passage that says she was older. Give me one passage that says she was 18. One. And he's going, yeah, but there are so many. So, yeah, one. And he's going, oh, look at him saying that. And I start going to the audience and go, guys, if he's saying there's a different age in the Muslim sources, is it too much for me to ask for one? Is it too much to ask for one source that says anything he's saying? And he can never give one because there isn't one.
Wow.
So again, it's when you hear Muslims now defending sex with minors, this is the standard position now, defending sex with little girls and saying it's fine. The reason is we force them into not lying. And then once everyone understands Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl, you can't say
then
it's
they double
wrong.
down on it. Some of them.
So you have to defend it.
It's going to be interesting to see what the Islamic dilemma, as you laid it out, is going to force Muslims to do over the next 10, 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what we want to see. I'm interested myself.
Now here's where things get uncomfortable, because this part isn't just about him. It's about what happens when belief systems start colliding with reality. Up to this point, he wasn't looking for Jesus nor searching for the truth. He was searching for weakness, something to expose, something to dismantle. And religion in his mind was the easiest target. Islam, Christianity, Scripture, and prophets. To him, they were all just claims, ideas that deserved to be tested, questioned, and if possible, torn apart. No emotional attachment, no fear of consequences, just cold analysis. And that's where the cracks began. Because when you seriously examine beliefs, really examine them, you don't just ask, what do I feel? You ask, does this actually hold together? He began noticing contradictions that wouldn't go away, questions that didn't have clean answers, explanations that felt forced, convenient, and patched together just to survive scrutiny. And here's the irony. The very tools he used to attack faith started turning inward. Because if one belief system collapses under its own weight, you don't walk away untouched. You're left staring at a bigger problem. If this isn't true, then what is? And even more unsettling, if truth exists at all, what does that mean for me? This wasn't a moment of worship. There were no tears nor altar calls. Just a man sitting with the realization that some worldviews demand you ignore what you clearly see, while others force you to wrestle with it honestly. And that tension between truth and pride began working on him, slowly and relentlessly. And the question was no longer, which religion is false? It was becoming, what if I've been wrong this whole time?
So the Islamic dilemma seems to show Islam to be false, doesn't prove Christianity to be true though, right? So
that's correct. An atheist could run that argument.
Right.
And an atheist could run that argument from just the Christian scriptures, like I said. In other words, an atheist could say, hey, I don't believe in the Christian scriptures, but your scriptures contradict the Christian scriptures while affirming their inspiration, preservation, authority, and therefore your religion self-destructs. You could say that without ever believing in the Christian scriptures at all.
So why are you a Christian?
Well, not because of the Islamic dilemma. I grew up as an atheist. I wasn't thinking of that when I was young. It was never an issue when I grew up. So it was the only time I ever encountered anything Christian was if I would visit my grandmother or something like that. That would be it. It never came up with my mom. It never came up with my dad until I was older and I actually realized I was an atheist, and then we would occasionally talk about something. So anyways, it's not an issue for my early life.
You didn't go to church or anything?
If I visited my grandmother or my aunt, but not my mom or dad or any. And it was, again, never. It was never a topic. And when I visited, if I was like at my aunt's and she took me to church, then I would basically go in there and I would sit beside this little clock and I would stare at the clock the entire time waiting for it over, because they would have like donuts and brownies afterwards, and that was cool. But nothing I ever took seriously. And I don't remember how old I was. I know I was a complete mocker by the time I was like 14. So it was probably a couple years before that, before I realized I was an atheist. And Yeah, I became a total mocker by the time I was like in high school. It's at some point. Yeah, again, most of my early life was not even thinking about it. I'm guessing I was around 12 or something like that when I was like, I don't believe in any of this stuff. And then 14, by the time I was just like openly mocking people and so on. And yep. So that was that up until I ended up in jail. I didn't realize it when I was young, but I was eventually, when I was 18, diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Okay. So it's more because when I tell my background story, atheists will go, "Why are you saying that atheists are like this?" I'm not saying atheists are like this. This is how I was. I wasn't just an atheist. I was an atheist with antisocial personality disorder. The bad combination, because you're going to end up hurting a lot of people along the way. I realized when I was probably 5 and 6, like the 5 to 7 year range. That's when I was realizing I was different from everyone else. I didn't know what antisocial personality disorder was. People need to be educated on this, because I'll tell you from experience, if you have antisocial personality disorder, which you wouldn't even have been diagnosed with it back then. They won't diagnose you till you're an adult. They'll diagnose you with like conduct disorder or something like that, but they don't like putting a label on young people. But you do have the symptoms when you're young. But I started noticing, and the example, because this is the example I give because this is when it first like hit me. It was, I'd had a dog as long as I can remember. So from before I could form memories and stuff, I had this little dog named Goliath, and was always hanging out with Goliath, running around doing things with Goliath and so on. And then I was over at a friend's house one day, and my mom gets a phone call to tell me that Goliath had been run over by a bus. Mm-hmm. And she turned to me with tears in her eyes, and she said, "Goliath's been hit by a bus." And like the first thought in my head was, so what? It's a dog. And but I'm looking at my mom going, why is she crying? She hated my dog. She hated that dog. Like, why is she crying over this? And I thought there was something wrong with my mom. Like, did you think that dog was going to live forever? Like, what, and why would you care? Like, what's going on here? So I was like confused, and I thought there was something weird with my mom. It wasn't until like, as time went on, I saw other people reacting this way. And I was like, wait, everyone's like upset about like animals. What? You guys not know? Do you not know about death? What's wrong with you? And I remember I was over, we actually lived here, and we had like this was like 2 years later, and we lived in a community house. There was a bunch of people living there, and we all had our dog. And once the dog got hit by a car and then was in a cast for a while. And then a while later, the dog got killed by a car. But these were all the tough kids. This was like a tough kid. These were like the tough kids. Everyone in the house had drugs. Everyone in the house did drugs and stuff like this. The kids in this house were like a gang. They were super tough. They were older than me. And they're all crying over this. They're crying over this dog too. And I walked in, and they all got their heads down in their hands and stuff like this. And they told me. And at that point, I was like, okay, now I need to fit in. But I was trying to figure out how to fit in. So I was either 6 or 7 at this time. But for some reason, I thought it was like the angle of your head that signified. So I copied the angle of their head, and I sort of leaned forward like this, and I got my head at the same angle, but I'm looking around making sure I'm doing it right. And all of a sudden, one of them, a kid named Todd, he goes, "Dave don't even care." And he was like, well, yeah, he's right, but it's a stupid dog, right? But so anyway, I learned it's more than just this head tilt. It's something more than that. So anyway, over time, you start just mimicking other people's reactions to things, but you don't know what antisocial personality disorder is. You just notice over time, everyone reacts in a certain way, and I'm the one who doesn't. I'm not reacting to any of these things. Nothing that you wouldn't feel bad for anything that happened. Like your entire family could die in front of you. There's no bad feeling. And yeah, so there's none of that. You are constantly breaking rules. And like the worst thing you could do is punish me for something, because things would have some level of deterrent effect on me for a while until you did it to me. And like, that's all you can do to me. That's all you're going to do. Like, David, you don't want to be suspended from school. No, I don't want to be suspended from school. And then they suspend, wait, you're going to make me sit at home and watch cartoons? That's what you're going to do if I get in trouble? So, yeah, it's that there's just no feeling bad for people or what's going on. And I've repented. I've never once felt guilt in my entire life. Wow. Guilt, remorse. To this day, I have no clue whatever feeling you guys are talking about. I've never felt it in my life at all. Wow. So I can recognize that I'm wrong and say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yes.
There's no feeling. there's never a feeling. It's duty-based. Here's what I'm supposed to do. And here's what I am supposed to do in this situation. And therefore I have to do what I'm supposed to do in this situation. If that's apologizing or whatever, then that's what I have to do. So I do what I'm supposed to do, but no, there's no feeling associated with it. Also, like over the past couple decades, I've developed sort of what I would call like second order responses that I could call remorse or guilt, but it's not what anyone else would. It's not a feeling. So in other words, with me, it's if I do something bad that I should feel guilt for and I don't feel it, I can sort of focus on the fact that I'm defective and messed up and not responding in a normal way. And that doesn't feel good. Hey, I'm defective. Any normal person would be feeling terrible after doing something. I feel nothing. What sort of pathetic, screwed up, messed up person am I that I do not react normally to these kinds of things? And that's not good. And so I could just call that guilt. It would be the sense that I am massively defective and screwed up for not responding in the normal human way. But when you're young, you don't know that. You don't know any of that. You don't know what antisocial personality disorder is. You don't know you have a problem. And so you think everyone else has a problem.
Yeah.
And over time, you think you're superior because you're learning to mimic other people's reactions. And in the course of mimicking other people's reactions, you learn to kind of play with other people's reactions. And you're constantly feeling like you're superior. And for everyone who's watching, right? Let me tell you an outsider's perspective here, an outsider's perspective. Some horrible tragedy happens in a family and everyone cries. And then suppose someone doesn't cry, they don't have that reaction. And that person looks like he's weird. But from an outsider's perspective, think about how weird it is. Like something bad happens and like salty goop starts leaking out of your eyes. And then someone else who doesn't have salty goop leaking out of their eyes, well, there's something wrong with that person.
Yeah.
Well, what does salty goop leaking out of your eyes have to do with anything, right? Like imagine a completely foreign culture. Like you go to some island somewhere or something like this, and then something happens and a baby's born and like wax starts leaking out of ears, and they look at you. No, he doesn't have wax leaking out of his ears. Oh, what an awful person. Wouldn't you be like, what's wrong with you? Like what's wrong with all you people? What's that got to do with anything? That's kind of what it's like.
Yeah.
It's like you're making no sense here. I don't care if it's all of you. It makes zero sense.
Have you ever cried?
When I was young, when I was enraged, like I could be so enraged. It was usually like not getting my way and having no way to get my way.
Right.
And I would be enraged and cry like that. Eventually, after I became a Christian, started like someone would get saved or something like this, and I would tear up. It wasn't until my third son was born, and he had a rare genetic muscle. We had no idea what it was, but he's born with floppy. It's called a floppy baby syndrome. He's basically floppy. He's got a heart rate, nothing else, no movement or anything. And my wife and I were praying, and all of a sudden while we're praying, I like got choked up. It was almost like, what the heck is that? That was like the first time in my life I got choked up over something that was sad, and not me being enraged or not for joy. But it was almost like, what just happened there? What was that? And I mean, I can count to you on like 3 or 4 fingers the time that has happened. One was after like Nabil died. When Nabil died, no reaction at all. And it wasn't until it was at the funeral, and I was talking to his parents. Like his parents were at the funeral, and I went up to them and I said, I'm sorry for the way I treated you. Because they were upset, understandably so. Their son left Islam. And I've always been like, well, so what? He's got some common sense. You should leave Islam too. That was like my attitude, and not like how heartbreaking this was for them. And so I actually apologized to them. They're sobbing. And all of a sudden, like I got choked up and started kind of crying too. As I'm talking to them and apologizing, then I took like 4 or 5 steps and it just, boom, it was gone. So it was there for a few seconds and then just like stopped. So anyway, it's like a couple of times it's happened since I become a Christian.
By now, the fight wasn't really about religion anymore. It was personal. Because when your argument starts slipping, when your certainty starts cracking, you don't just feel challenged, you feel exposed. And that's exactly what was happening. On the outside, he still looked confident, still sharp, still mocking faith, mocking God, and mocking Christians. But on the inside, something wasn't adding up. Here's the part most people won't admit. Doubt doesn't usually arrive as a question. It shows up as discomfort, a nagging sense that something is off, that the worldview you've built your life on doesn't explain you anymore. It makes no more sense. He could explain logic, debate philosophy, and analyze religion. But he couldn't explain himself. Why the emotional emptiness? Why the lack of empathy? Why the constant pull toward danger, chaos, and destruction? And this is where things got unsettling. Because Christianity wasn't just making claims about God anymore. It was making claims about human nature, about sin, brokenness, and about hearts that don't work the way they're supposed to. And suddenly, those ideas weren't abstract. They were accurate. The Bible wasn't reading like mythology anymore. It was reading like a diagnosis. And that's a terrifying moment, when truth stops feeling like an argument and starts feeling like a mirror. He wasn't ready to surrender, not even close. But the wall he'd built, this image of being above everyone else, smarter, freer, and untouchable, it was all starting to crumble. Because when a belief system can't explain your darkness, and another one does, you don't walk away unchanged. You can run and resist, but you can't unsee what you've seen. And that's where the real struggle begins.
I can have good feelings and laughing and stuff like this. It's
Okay.
mainly
It's just the sorrow thing. Just not feeling
it's
bad.
mainly the sad things, the empathy type things, that sort of thing. And then the other thing is like dangerous behavior. Like you're not doing anything unless you're doing something bad. And matter of fact, this is actually weird. My entire life, I had a horribly low heart rate. Like way back in school, they'd say, okay, let's all test our heart rates and stuff. We all count stuff, and all the kids are counting theirs out, 75, 76 and stuff. And they get to me and I go 42. And the teacher would go, no, you didn't count right. And I'm like, I know how to count, you idiot. I know how to count my heart, count my heartbeats and stuff. But I would go get a physical and stuff like this. And they would go, are you dizzy right now? And I go, no, I'm fine. They go, your heart rate is dangerously low, and so is your blood pressure and stuff. And they're like, we need to figure this out. So they're like testing my thyroid and stuff, trying to figure out why my heart rate is so low, and they can never figure it out. Anyways, this was just a few years ago, and I was reading it and it said, people with antisocial personality disorder have abnormally low heart rates, and they conclude that it's like one of the theories of antisocial personality disorder is your entire nervous system is basically wired for extremely low psychological arousal. It means it's bored out of its mind, and you have to do dangerous stuff to get to a normal human level. And so you don't feel like a normal human level unless you're doing some stuff where it's putting you in danger. And it's like, I was thinking, oh my goodness, that makes sense. I've always had to mess with people. Like if I walk by a gang of bikers right now, I would have an urge to like say something to mess with them. But I mean, I'm just looking at my life. So I end up in prison, all this stuff. Yeah. And then what do I decide to do eventually? Mess with jihadis on a daily basis, right? So it's like, okay, this is all making sense from a psychological perspective.
So you're not very emotional?
No. There's the bright side. So one, you don't want to have it, but if you do, then it can be helpful in certain situations. In fact, when I mentioned one of my sons having a rare disease, so we had 5 sons, 2 of them had that genetic disease. One of them died a couple of years ago, and I was interested in how my oldest 2 sons were going to react. Like, how are they going to react? Because are they going to react like me? Or are they going to react like their mom? Or what's going on? And one of my sons walked in, and we went to the hospital and so on, and he just sat there and cried for like 2 hours. And I was thinking, good, he's normal. That's going to help him in marriage. That's going to help him when he has kids because he's normal. He reacts normal, and that's good. My other oldest son, he walked in, totally blank expression, didn't cry at all, but he went and hugged his mom, my wife, for like 10 or 15 minutes, just stood there, just no expression on his face, just stood there and hugged. And I was thinking, okay, he's not reacting normally. He's more like me, which I thought, just knowing him. But he still knows what he has to do. He still knows what his duty is. And your duty in that situation is to comfort your mom. And so he understood that. So I'm like, okay, if civilization breaks down or something like this, he'll be okay. He'll be okay. And as long as he knows what he has to do as a man, then I'm fine.
So what was it like when your son died? What did you feel?
I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no, again, there's no, I wish there were.
Yeah,
I wish there
yeah.
were, but there's no, I don't know if there's
Is
no.
it just logical? Like, yes, I assumed he would die, and now
and-
we got details to worry about, or did you miss him? I presume.
Yeah, it's just, it's sort of a situation of, okay, I'm the rock in this situation, and I didn't decide that. It was like other people died along the way, and then like people would say, oh, he's so, it's so comforting to it's so comforting to see how strong he's being in this situation. I'm thinking, well, okay, you think I'm just the strong one here and not the mental one, then that's good.
We'll go with that one.
I'll be your rock in these situations. Again, when you're growing up and you don't know that there's an actual problem because you never heard of this. I'd heard of psychopaths and sociopaths and stuff like that. Those are like popular terms for people with any social personality disorder, but you don't know about any of this stuff. And so you just think everyone else is defective. So I actually concluded over time that I had like evolved to another level of humanity.
Raskolnikov.
Yeah, that was a really bad book for me to read.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, because this is not associated with any social personality disorder. It's something else. It's something else. But I had delusional thoughts at various times. Like the first time I remember, I was watching a line of ants. I was probably like 7 or 8 or something like that. I was watching a line of ants march along beside a lake, and it became clear to me all of a sudden that ants actually control the world, and that they had tricked human beings into thinking we were in charge. Mm-hmm. And there's no here's the evidence that that's based on. It just like suddenly becomes clear to you. It's like really weird. So I can kind of understand like crazy people with delusional thoughts because I've had them. It's like, do you remember those? They're popular in the 90s. They were like those I think they're called auto stereograms, but I forget what they're called on the popular level. But they were just pictures with like designs on them. If you stare at them long enough and let your eyes go out of focus, like an image will come
Magic
out.
eye.
Magic eye. The magic eye things. It was like that. You're staring at it and I don't see anything. I don't see anything. I don't see anything. And then, whoa, it pops out. It's like that. It's like that over and over again. But like, so at that point it was ants control the world, and then it would go away. It would go away 10 minutes later or something like that. But then eventually it was, I thought cats and dogs controlled the world, and that they were actually like in our houses to keep an eye on us and stuff like this and maintain their control. And so there were those kinds of things. And then like all of 10th grade, I thought I controlled the weather. And like it would rain, I'd be like, how did I just make that happen? Mm-hmm. And I was trying to figure out how I was controlling the weather without realizing I was controlling the weather. And then
did you share this with anybody?
I would run my mouth, but they just thought I was running my mouth. It's like, don't worry about the rain, I'll take care of it, and blah blah blah. Right? They just thought I was like, just running my mouth.
Right.
And then I was 18, and I thought that I was part of an experiment, and everyone's like conspiring. Everyone in the world is in on the experiment except for me. And those kinds of thoughts. So those kinds of delusional thoughts I had along the way. That's different from any social personality disorder. So had a couple of problems along the way. But over time, with the not having the same emotional reactions, I concluded that I'm in a completely different category. I've evolved to a higher stage of humanity. Everyone else is beneath me. And then I read Crime and Punishment, and it was a few times before then that I thought that I would read something or I would hear a song or something, and I would think it was speaking directly towards me. It could be a song, and I would hear, no, that's telling me specifically something. Crime and Punishment was like, it was all of a sudden, it was big. It was like, and it makes no sense. Keep in mind, I'm a complete atheist, a naturalist. It makes no sense for me to be getting messages from the universe or something like that, but that's just what I thought. It doesn't make sense. Looking back, it didn't make any sense, but it makes perfect sense to you while you're there. So reading Crime and Punishment, you got Raskolnikov, and he does all this stuff, and he's got his Superman theory, and then he does it, and then he turns out he's a little weakling, and he actually can't. That's not him. He had the correct theory, but it's not about him. It's about me, and it's from the. Think about this. I'm some dude from a trailer park in West Virginia thinking I'm like the most advanced human being in the world, and that the universe is sending me a message telling me I'm beyond everyone else's like morality and rules, and I don't have to follow any of this stuff. I'd already concluded that. It's like confirmation, like, and the universe is telling me I'm right, which makes no sense given my worldview. So that just convinced me everything I'm doing is right. I'm not bound by anyone's rules. I never felt like it, like I should be bound by anyone else's rules. But now it's like I've got this separate confirmation of everything I've concluded up to before then. And so anyway, got in a lot of trouble along the way, but I eventually attacked my dad with a hammer. I hit him in the head 7 or 8 times with a hammer. I thought he was dead. I left him for dead. Yeah, just like it was like a final. I felt like. Was he
mean to you, or
he had been mean to? There was no reason. It was not. Oh, I'm really mad at you or something like that. It was. It was. I mean, I can describe it. It was.
Yeah.
Like. Every time I was following a rule, even if it was just like required, like if David, here's what you have to do, I felt like I was somehow polluted, like something had been added to my pure awesomeness and you had added something to me. And so I had this inclination to just, whatever you're trying to make me do, like do the opposite. And I would get this feeling of freedom whenever I would do the opposite. So it's a rule, you can't do this. You can't break into a store, you can't do this, you can't steal that and stuff. And every time I did, it felt good. Like, oh, here's the real me. Here's the real me. I've gotten rid of that pollution that you tried to stick into me with your inferior nature and so on. And so, but you have to keep upping the game, right? And so eventually it's I'll kill my own dad, and then that's going to be like the real me. Then I'm pure. I'm done with it. What else can I do after that? What else can I do after I've done that? And that's going to be like the real D Wood, completely unpolluted from the world that's constantly trying to pollute my pure awesomeness or whatever you want to call it. I was planning other things, and then that's what I decided would be like. I was thinking like I started studying bomb building and things like that. Back then you could just walk into a bookstore and get books on like bomb building and stuff like that. And like you get the anarchist cookbook, you get the simple stuff, and then you're like pyrotechnics and teaching you how to like make fireworks. And then, if you modify it this way and stuff. And I was buying books on disguises and stuff, how to disguise yourself to do all this. And, but I was just thinking like, what am I going to do? Kill a bunch of people I don't even know? Anyone could do that. Anyone drops a bomb on a place just does that. So like,
too easy.
Yeah, got to be closer, right? So I was living with my dad at that point, and okay, this is the real. This is how you really go about it. So planned that, and so I attacked him with a hammer, left him for dead. He was asleep. He woke up while I was doing it, but yeah. So then left there, went to it was Thanksgiving morning. I thought he was dead.
Yeah.
I didn't know you would survive.
No, I wouldn't either.
I was about 235 pounds. I didn't know you would survive a 235 pound dude hitting you 7 or 8 times in the head with a ball-peen hammer.
Yeah.
I thought you were dead. I thought you'd be dead from one hit.
Yeah.
So 7 or 8 to seal the deal. Yep. Then went to that was in Virginia. So then that was probably like 3 a.m, Thanksgiving Day, 1994. Drove, and I was just going to go have Thanksgiving dinner with the rest of my family that day. No.
Excitement, maybe.
No, it was, I mean, I thought there was going to be some awesome feeling of the ultimate freedom and stuff like that, but it was just, there was just no feeling. There was no good or bad feeling. It was just like blank. You didn't want to get caught, but no, that's the thing. It's like, once you, what can you do to me? That's why I said it was better to never punish me than to punish me, because once you punish me, always it was like, this is all you can do to me. And so by that time it's, no, I don't want to get caught, but what if you do? I was like repulsed by the idea of doing what everyone else did. And that meant like the whole pattern of life. Okay, so you start off and you got kindergarten, then you go through 12 years of school, and then you decide you go get a job, or do you go to college? And then if you go to college, and then you have your career, and then you work for 30 or 40 years, and then you retire, and then you're old and you sit around. It's like, why do I want to do any of that? Why? Because you guys do? Because you guys have decided this is the pattern. The guys who come up with the rules that I'm supposed to follow, then you come up with like the entire pattern of life that I'm supposed to follow. Why? Why wouldn't I just do whatever I feel like doing? And if you can do something in response, so what? It doesn't really matter. And so, turns out my dad survived. And so first they put me in a mental hospital. That's where they concluded that I had no idea what antisocial personality disorder was. When they eventually gave me my diagnosis, I just thought it meant I'm not very social. It's like, yeah, people are disgusting, right? Of course, that's not what they mean. That's not what they mean at all. So, so I end up in jail because antisocial personality disorder, that's not something you stay in a mental hospital for. That's something they lock you up for. If you've done something. But it's not like being schizophrenic or something like that where they keep you in a mental hospital. Tons of people in jail and prison have antisocial personality disorder.
And this is where the story takes a turn nobody expects. Because the breakthrough didn't happen in a church. Neither did it happen during prayer. It happened in prison, of all places, through a conversation. Not with a pastor or a scholar, but with an ordinary Christian sitting on a bunk, reading his Bible. At first, the goal was simple: destroy his faith. And usually, that worked. Most believers backed down. Most didn't want conflict. But this one didn't. He pushed back. He asked questions and gave reasons. And for the first time, the atheist wasn't winning. That alone was unsettling. So the strategy changed. Fasting became a competition. Willpower became a weapon, and pride was driving everything. But while the body was weakening, the mind was waking up. Because in those long hours, the questions got louder. Why would men willingly die for something they knew was a lie? Why didn't the disciples run when Jesus was killed? Why did their message spread through persecution instead of power? These weren't church questions. These were historical questions. Uncomfortable ones. And the Bible, once just ammo for debate, started sounding different. Not soft, not sentimental, but brutally honest about sin, pride, and the human heart. It wasn't telling him he was misunderstood. It was telling him he was broken. And strangely, that explanation fits. For the first time, Christianity wasn't offering an excuse. It was offering an answer. And in that prison cell, between arguments and hunger and stubborn pride, something began to shift. The realization that truth might not bend to arrogance, and that Jesus wasn't as easy to dismiss as he once thought.
So I end up in a dorm, and in the dorm, there's a guy named Randy, and he was a Christian that I started talking to. And the first time I talked to him, he was up on his bunk reading his Bible, and I just walk up to him and I go, "Hey, you know why you're reading the Bible? You're reading the Bible because you're born in the United States. If you've been born anywhere else, you believe in something else. If you've been born in China, you'd be a Buddhist. If you've been born in Saudi Arabia, you'd be a Muslim. If you've been born in India, you'd be a Hindu, because people like you believe whatever you're told to believe." So I was proud of the fact that I didn't go along with what everyone else was, which is weird, because if you talked about like where the universe came from and where life came from, I believed exactly what I'd heard in my science class and stuff like that. So I believed what I was taught to believe. But I thought I was this awesome free thinker. Anyway, then I started talking to Randy. It turns out he was in jail because he'd become a Christian, and he went in and turned himself in he'd been a criminal. He went in and turned himself in on 21 felonies and stuff like this. So they locked him up and stuff. And anyway, then he's in there and he's reading his Bible, and I started arguing with him. But it was weird because he started arguing back. I'd argue with Christians, and lots of times Christians might push back slightly, but as soon as they see you're like really aggressive, they go, "Oh, we don't want to fight about this. We don't want to argue about this," and stuff like this. It's not something you argue about. He was quite comfortable just arguing over and over again. And so we just kept arguing for I guess months about Christianity. And it was weird because I didn't know that there were people who actually had any reasons for believing anything. He kept winning some of these arguments, and it was really weird to me. Keep in mind, I think I'm the smartest, most advanced human being in the world. And not just a Christian, but a Christian dumb enough to turn himself in for a bunch of crimes, like dumbest of the dumb, is beating me in arguments. And so all I could think of is he must be winning because he's just talking about stuff that I've never studied, I've never learned. And so all I would have to do is learn some of this stuff, and then I can actually crush this dude. And we eventually got into this fasting battle, which wasn't a battle for him. He's just fasting. He's talking about, hey, I can do long-term fasting right now because I'm in jail. And so I can do long-term fasting, and I might not have another opportunity to do long-term fasting for the rest of my life. So I'm going to do long-term fasting now. So I would fast, not for fast. I would just do it to beat him, right? So he fasted for 7 days, and I know because he gave me all his trays. It was nice. Yeah. He gave me all his trays and stuff. And so I said, all right, I'm doing 10, right? So I went 10 days. First time I'd ever fasted in my life, I went 10 days, nothing but water. And then I ate for a weekend, and then went another 10 days just to rub it in. And it's just pure rage just to beat the Christian because I can't out-argue him. So we keep going back and forth. And he actually noticed over time, he goes, hey, how come every time I fast, you go like a couple days more? And I go, I don't know, just coincidence, I guess. When it wasn't a coincidence. It's all Eventually, he went 40 days. He went like 32 days on nothing but water, and then he started drinking like Kool-Aid to prepare his body for eating again, because it actually messes you up. You go a long time, and then all of a sudden you eat, you get messed up because your food goes right through your stomach into your intestine and stuff, and you're in horrible, horrible, awful pain. So he starts preparing his body for food again, and he finishes, and he told me, Jesus has gone 40 days, and so I said, all right, I'm going 42. I'm going to beat you and Jesus. So I start, and it was on the 11th day when I like totally passed out in front of a guard and hit my head, and then you had other people like reporting me. They thought, and they looked at my mental health rate. They thought I was trying to starve myself to death. I was like, I'm trying to beat the Christian. You guys think I'm trying to starve myself to death? Like I'm trying to commit suicide really, really slowly here, right? Like the dumbest way imaginable. Anyway, so they stick me in a cell with a camera cell, and they think I'm trying to starve myself to death. So they're threatening me, and I started eating after that because I wanted to go back into the dorm. And then they wouldn't let me out of the cell. They kept me in the cell with the camera because they thought they're looking at my mental health record and stuff, saying something's wrong with this guy. And so they wouldn't let me out, so then I stopped eating again and stuff. Anyway, I went from about 235 pounds down to, the last time they weighed me, I was 152. I'm 6'3". I was 152, and I know several days after that I wasn't eating and stuff. So I'm guessing I got right around like 149, 150 or something like that, which would be a normal weight for someone. I've always been like the big 230, 235 pound guy. So, but I'm back there, and I'm reading everything I can get my hands on. It's all kinds of stuff. I'm reading philosophy. I was reading Dialogues of Plato. I was reading Epictetus. I was reading Marcus Aurelius and so on. And also reading the Bible, but I'm just reading the Bible, so I know what I'm talking about when I go and argue with this guy. And he had pointed out how the disciples died, because I was accused. My theory that I gave him was, they believed in Jesus, their guy died, they wanted to keep the movement going, so they made up a story about him rising from the dead. Boom, I have solved the mystery of Christianity. And he was going, that doesn't make sense. These guys went to their like bloody deaths, being tortured and killed. And he gave me Fox's Book of Martyrs. I'm sitting there reading their death. Now, some of that stuff is wrong. It's based on later sources and stuff. But I actually, earlier this year, I did an interview with Sean McDowell. Yeah, earlier this year, I did an interview with Sean McDowell, because some of that stuff is based on late sources. And some of it's really solid. So I went through with Sean McDowell, and yeah, we concluded some of the stuff in Fox's Book of Martyrs is based on late sources you can't really trust. But you have a pretty solid case that a bunch of these guys died for their proclamation that Jesus had died on the cross and risen from the dead and appeared to them and so on. But anyway, I was just thinking about that. Why are these guys, my theory is that these guys made this up and died for it. It doesn't make any sense. Why would, I tried to think of one other person in history who died for something that he knew he made up. Like lots of people die for things, but you kind of have to believe in it. You can't just be making it up, right? Like, so jihadis fly into planes into building. Okay, say what you want about the guy. I believe he believes what he's saying. That guy believes in Islam. If he's dying for Islam, he believes it. He's not just saying, oh yeah, I'll just make up that I'm believing in Islam and then die for it. Doesn't make any sense. So I tried to think of one person in all of history who died for something that he knew he made up. I'm making up something and I'm willing to die for it. I couldn't think of anything. I couldn't think of anyone. I couldn't think of one person. Like every person I could think of who was dying for something he believed in, you kind of have to believe in it. So it doesn't make sense that these guys made it up, that they're all conspiring to make up a story, and then they're willing to die for it. So I was just trying to figure it out. Why would these guys die? Why would these guys die? Why would these guys die? It started not making sense. And basically it was like three things that came together. I came up with a kind of design argument. I thought I was inventing it. I thought I was inventing this design argument, but I was just looking around at the brick. I was just looking at the bricks. I'm sitting on my bunk and I'm looking at the bricks on the wall. And I just thought, like, if someone told me these bricks went into this order by some natural process, I would think he's a freaking idiot. Like, I would think you'd have to be an idiot to say that. You would be the dumbest person in the world. I would smack you in your mouth for saying something stupid like that. But I believe life formed on its own. Like, life is way more complicated and sophisticated than the simplest living cell is vastly more sophisticated than some bricks stacked up on a wall. So it wasn't, oh no, therefore life couldn't have arisen by chance. It was more along the lines of, why did I accept that with no proof? And I just accepted it with what my teacher said. In other words, I was always repulsed by the idea of other inferior beings telling me what to believe. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, these guys have been getting me all along. Like, they've been telling me what to believe about stuff all along. And I just bought into it because it was a teacher in some position of authority. I thought I was the one who was exempt from that stuff. And I was like, no, they got me on that. They got me on the universe and on life and stuff like that. So it wasn't I concluded life must have been designed. It was now I'm doubting that position because no one ever gave me any evidence that life formed on its own. You just told me that was the case and scientists agree with this. That's what happened. You never gave me any evidence. So why did I believe that? And so I started thinking about design, and maybe I jumped the gun on concluding that life formed on its own. And then the other thing that started bothering me was like I'd been holding to two beliefs that didn't go together at all for a long time. And one was everything is completely pointless. It's ultimately like meaningless. That's why it doesn't matter what you do to me. Like who cares? Oh no, you're going to go to, so what? It doesn't matter. None of this matters. Your dog died. Who cares? It's all, think back then, right? Oh no, your dog died. Guess what? Every dog that was on the planet at that time is dead. So what, right? Everyone who remembered every dog that was alive on that planet a few years from now is going to be dead. What's the point? It doesn't matter, right? So my view back then, you got this giant universe, you got like our little speck of a galaxy, and there's a little speck of a galaxy, there's like a little piece of dust that's our sun. And then there's this little, even smaller, pathetic piece of dust going around. These little blobs of cells on there thinking they're so important. How delusional are you? Nothing you do in the grand scheme of things matters even slightly. It doesn't. The universe is not changing at all based on anything you're doing. It's all pointless. So I held that, and yet I'm this sort of super important, greatest human being who's ever lived, and I set the rules, and like those don't go together. How am I the most important, most advanced human being in this completely meaningless, pointless world where nothing really matters? And those don't go together. It's like, pick one.
Yeah.
If it's all just pointless and meaningless, so am I, and I'm not important at all, and I'm not the greatest. What's the standard of me being the greatest, and by what standard? It doesn't make any sense. So like, I got to drop one of those. They don't go together. And that finally hit me. And at the same time, I'm reading about Jesus, and I'm just thinking, okay, there is, in my worldview, there is no standard. So it makes no sense for me to think that I'm the greatest and the most important. It doesn't make any sense. If, however, that's wrong, and there is a greatest and most advanced, like, what are the odds that I'm it? If I don't even know what the standard is, how can I say I'm the highest thing on the standard? Like,
Right.
what am I the standard? Why would I think that I'm the standard? And I just started, okay, if this guy who may have risen from the dead, what's more likely, that he's the standard and I'm the standard, or that he's greater or that I'm greater? And I'm thinking, what am I the greatest? And it's just thinking about all these things, and it finally hit me, right? It finally hit me like, I'm a guy sitting on a bunk. I can't stop drooling. Like, the not eating somehow just made me like nonstop drool. And it got to a point where I would just have a cup on the floor beside my bunk, and I would just drool into it. Like, I got sick of spitting. I would just drool into a cup on the side of the bed. I got a rash all over me called shingles, but not eating for a long time, your immune system depletes, and it reactivates the chickenpox virus in you, and it's first it's around your waist, then it's under your arms and stuff, but it feels just like poison ivy. It's all over you and stuff like that. But I'm sitting there scratching myself, drooling into a cup. The doctor was telling me, hey, as soon as your blood reads such and such, we're going to start tube feeding. We're going to stick a tube in you. We're going to make you eat. And my lawyer told me that the psychiatrist wanted to send me to Marion, which would have been my third mental hospital. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm a guy who's in here for trying to murder my dad with a hammer because I think I'm so superior to everything else. I can't stop drooling. I'm scratching myself to death. I can't stand up without falling over and busting my head. I'm about to be sent permanently to a mental hospital where they're going to be tube feeding me. How exactly am I the best person in the world just because I don't cry when something bad happens, right? So in a short period of time, I went from thinking that I'm the best person in the world to thinking I'm the most pathetic person in the world. And once you conclude, like, gosh, like, who's worse than, that's what I was actually thinking, like, who's worse than me in this world? Like, there are people who are starving. At least they can think straight. At least they're not drooling. Why? Who's worse than me in the world? So I went to thinking that I'm the worst person in the world, and that put me in a little dilemma. Not the Islamic dilemma, but it put me in a little dilemma. And it was just this. It was, either this is what I am, like this is who I am. All the stuff I've been trying to like purify myself, I'm in the pure state now. I've done it. I've done everything to get in this pure state. And this pure state is me on a bed, drooling with a rash all over me, heading to a mental hospital. That's like what I am. Either that's what I am, because that's what either like what I am is this thing, this pathetic, disgusting excuse of a human being. Or there's someone out there who can help with this sort of thing. Like, this is just the way I am, and I need to get, and I'll just get used to it because this is the way I am. Or there's someone who can fix this sort of thing. And when you start thinking like that, once you realize this is not me being more advanced than everyone else, I'm actually more screwed up than other people, and I'm defective. I don't have some ability that everyone else lacks. I lack things that everyone else has, and that makes me screwed up, not greater. Then it becomes, okay, this is either what I am, or there's someone out there who can help with this sort of thing. When you start thinking like that, I think you're about that close to becoming a Christian, because when you ask yourself, okay, who out of anyone else in history who had the ability to take screwed up, messed up people and do something with them, you basically get a list of one. It ain't Muhammad. You get a list of Jesus. That's it. Jesus is the one who took people like demon-possessed, like lunatics and stuff like this, and hey, I can fix things for you. And so I had to say, at that point, it was not, oh man, I'm convinced of Christianity right now. It was, if I pray and nothing happens, so what? Like, if I pray and nothing changes and this is what I am, okay, so what? This is where I am. I'm not getting any worse. There's nothing I could say. There's nothing I could pray right now. And oh man, now I'm really bad off because I prayed and nothing happened. It was, okay, if I pray and nothing happens, then I'm in the same spot. But if I pray and something changes, then okay, let's see what happens. And so I bowed down on my bunk and I prayed and I said, God, I don't know if I'm going to believe in you tomorrow, but I believe in you right now. And if you can do anything with me, you are welcome to it. And so I prayed that, and then I did like the prayer of accepting Jesus that I read in these Bible studies and so on that they sent me, and then I sat up, and everything looked different. Like the world looked like it had all changed colors. And like people, like I've heard people saying, you know, don't base your beliefs on feelings and stuff like that. I'm just saying this because this is what I felt like. So I'm just telling you my experience. But otherwise, don't base your beliefs and things and decisions on feelings. But I sat up, and you know, I've heard people say they felt like a weight lifted off their backs and so on. I sat up, and the way I felt right when I sat up was, I say, try to imagine if you're born and you were like tossed into a fighting pit, and all you do is fight. And you know of no other existence at all in your life except just constant like bloodbath fighting and stuff like that. And that's your entire life. That's all you've ever experienced. And then all of a sudden it just stops. Wow. That's what it felt like. It just like, boom, it just stopped. And I was like, what's going on? And so anyway, that's when I became a Christian. I was still pretty messed up, but I'm going to be reading my Bible. So I started reading my Bible, and it got to the point where, because I mean, keep in mind, I was still locked up for malicious wounding on my dad. And so I had years to serve in prison, but it got to the point where just me reading my Bible, hanging out with Christians and stuff. Just a couple years later, I'd be talking to someone. I remember this guy, Floyd Walls. I was walking through the dorm, and Floyd, he was sweeping the floor, and he stops me. He goes, "Hey, Wood, I was talking to some of the other guys, and we were trying to figure out how someone like you could ever get locked up. And so we're thinking maybe you're walking down the street with your girlfriend, and maybe someone said something slick to her, and you defended her, beat him up, and then got locked up, maybe hurt him too bad. We're thinking something like that." And I'm just like, that's when I was like, you guys think I'm a good guy? Because up until I thought I was like scum of the world. Yeah. And it didn't occur to me that everyone all of a sudden thought I was like the good guy after a couple of years. And so, went from everyone saying this guy needs to be locked up because this guy's got some serious problems, to a couple of years later, how could David Wood ever get locked up? It must be for defending someone.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
And did you ever reconcile with your dad?
Yep. Yeah, I actually, I wrote him a nice long letter, basically telling him my entire mental history and stuff, and everything I was thinking along the way and stuff like that. And he came to see me right after that, and
What was that
I actually
like?
paroled to his house.
Beg your pardon?
I
You
paroled to his house when I.
What was that like? That
Oh no!
just
I
being
mean,
reunited with him after.
oh no! I mean, it was cool. He didn't. It was okay. You were messed up. You're a Christian now. You're better.
Wow, is he still alive?
No, he died. He died of a heart attack. About, I don't know, 15 years ago or so.
And this is the moment everything finally comes into focus. Not because all the questions disappeared, not because doubt suddenly vanished, but because something deeper broke. The illusion of control. For so long, the goal was to win, to dominate arguments and to stand above everyone else intellectually and morally. But later on, he ran into a truth he couldn't debate away. If Jesus really rose from the dead, then everything changes, not just religion or philosophy, but life itself. Because the resurrection doesn't just demand belief, it demands surrender. It says you're not the highest authority. You're not self-made, nor beyond judgment, or grace. And that was the hardest part. Christianity wasn't asking him to become religious. It was asking him to admit something he had avoided his entire life. I'm not okay. I'm not whole, and I need saving. That realization didn't feel freeing at first. It felt humiliating. But here's the paradox of the gospel. The moment you stop pretending you're strong is the moment real strength becomes possible. Faith didn't enter through emotion. It entered through truth, evidence, and a relentless confrontation with reality. And slowly, almost against his will, Jesus stopped being a concept and became a person. This is what makes this story so powerful. God didn't reach an atheist through fear, manipulation, or blind tradition. He reached him through truth, through honest questions, broken pride, and an unwilling heart. If God can break through intellectual arrogance, through emotional emptiness, and through prison walls and a mind that resisted him at every turn, then let me ask you something, honestly. What makes you think he can't reach you? Your doubts don't scare him, your questions don't offend him, and your past doesn't disqualify you. Grace was never meant for people who think they deserve it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever wrestled with doubt, anger, or emptiness, you're not alone. Jesus doesn't ask you to clean yourself up first. He asks you to come honestly. If you found value in this journey, like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories that challenge, convict, and point us back to Christ. And remember this: no heart is too hardened, no mind is too far gone, and no soul is beyond redemption. Until next time, stay open, stay honest, and keep seeking.